will tell you a story the city still whispers about, a story that begins behind closed doors, with water running and a grown girl crying like a child. Amarachi lived in a crowded city compound where everyone woke before sunrise, chasing buses, money, and dignity, while she slept through life without guilt. She was not sick, not broken, not cursed, just comfortable in her laziness, wrapped in excuses like a warm blanket she refused to drop. While other girls scrubbed floors and washed uniforms, Amarachi laughed loudly, scrolling, eating, dreaming of comfort without effort, ignoring every warning thrown her way. Her stepmother, Mama Ifinanya, tried everything: gentle talks, harsh scolding, prayers at dawn, but nothing moved the girl who believed tomorrow would clean itself. Shamefully, the woman still bathed Amarachi like a baby, pouring water over a body that refused responsibility, a secret the walls struggled to keep. Neighbors noticed the smell, the silence, the strange dependence, but no one spoke yet, because the city loves to watch before it judges. Amarachi did not care about their eyes or whispers. She believed love meant service and that someone would always rescue her from herself. But listen closely, because comfort can become a trap, and kindness, when abused, can turn into the sharpest lesson of all. This is where it begins, the day before the humiliation. The calm before a storm that will strip Amarachi of excuses and force her to choose who she would become. As a storyteller, I must tell you this part slowly, because this was the season when life knocked gently, long before it decided to break the door. Every morning, Mama Ifinanya begged Amarachi to wake up early, to at least wash her face or sweep the front of the house, but the girl always turned to the wall and slept again. Tomorrow, Amarachi would say, stretching lazily, as if tomorrow was a loyal servant that would never get tired of waiting. The city compound was alive with effort, women hawking, men fixing generators, children rushing to school, yet Amarachi remained frozen in comfort. Friends who once laughed with her began to change. They spoke of jobs, skills, and dreams, while she mocked them for stressing over life. Why suffer when people will always help you? She said boldly, not knowing how dangerous those words were. Mama Ifinanya warned her one evening, her voice shaking with fear rather than anger, telling her that the world was not as patient as a stepmother's heart. Amarachi laughed it off, eating her food while being fed, scrolling her phone, blind to the tears falling quietly into the soup. Even the neighbors started advising, shaking their heads, but advice sounds like noise to someone who has never tasted consequence. What Amarachi did not know was that kindness has a limit, and when it ends, it does not whisper, it announces itself loudly. That night, the city slept peacefully, unaware that by morning, a secret would escape the bathroom walls and change Amarachi's life forever. Storyteller's voice steady now, because this was the morning fate chose not to be silent anymore. The sun rose hot and unforgiving, and Mama Ifinanya stood in the bathroom staring at Amarachi, who sat on a stool like a tired toddler, arms folded, eyes empty. Water poured again over a grown body that refused effort, and something inside the woman finally cracked. Her hands trembled as she scrubbed, not from weakness, but from shame that had grown too heavy to carry alone. A neighbor knocked, then another, complaining about the smell creeping through the compound, curiosity pushing them closer. The bathroom door opened, and what they saw froze the air. Amarachi being bathed like a baby, naked in her laziness, helpless by choice. Whispers exploded into laughter, phones came out, mouths covered in disbelief, and pity mixed cruelly with mockery. Amarachi screamed then, not because of the water, but because dignity slipped through her fingers in front of everyone she knew. Mama Ifinanya dropped the bowl and walked out, leaving silence behind, a silence heavier than any shout. That day, the city named her the baby woman, and Amarachi learned too late that reputation, once broken, does not ask permission before spreading. As night fell, she sat alone for the first time, skin dry, stomach empty, and heart pounding, realizing the world had finally noticed her. Let me lower my voice here, because this chapter is about silence, the kind that follows shame when laughter has finished echoing. Morning came, but no water was prepared, no towel laid out, no gentle knocking on Amarachi's door. She waited, pretending not to care, telling herself Mama Ifinanya was only angry and would soon return to her duties. Hours passed, hunger crawled into her stomach, and still no one called her name. When Amarachi finally stepped outside, the compound felt different. Eyes avoided her, whispers followed her shadow, and children laughed openly. A former friend pointed and joked, calling her baby woman, and for the first time, Amarachi felt the sting of words she once ignored. She returned inside and shouted for her stepmother, but the room answered with emptiness and cold walls. That evening, Mama Ifunanya did not cook for her, did not call her, did not even look in her direction. The woman slept early, exhausted from years of carrying a grown child who refused to stand. Amarachi tried to eat leftover food with dirty hands, but her stomach rejected it, and tears followed for reasons she could no longer explain. That night, she slept in discomfort, sweat clinging to her skin, realizing help had quietly withdrawn its hands. And as I tell you this, understand the lesson forming. Sometimes punishment is not beating or shouting, but being left alone with who you truly are. Amarachi did not know it yet, but abandonment was only the first teacher life was about to send. Listen carefully now, because this was the chapter where the body began to teach lessons the mouth refused to hear. Amarachi woke up weak, her throat dry, her stomach twisted in painful knots that no excuse could silence. She dragged herself to the kitchen, hoping for mercy, but found empty pots and a clean floor that accused her without words. Mama Ifunanya had cooked only for herself, eating quietly, and left early, choosing peace over sacrifice. By afternoon, the sun burned hot, sweat soaked Amarachi's unwashed skin, and the smell that once followed her now trapped her inside shame. Neighbors passed by, some offering looks of pity, others laughing openly, but no one brought food or water. Amarachi tried to borrow money, but friends she once mocked turned their backs, reminding her that help favors effort. With trembling hands, she attempted to cook for the first time in years, but the fire scared her, and the pot burned. Frustration turned into tears, tears into anger, and anger into a question she could no longer escape: how did I let it get this bad? That evening, hunger humbled her pride, forcing her to wash her own hands and face, awkward and slow, like learning life all over again. She stared at her reflection in dirty water and barely recognized the girl looking back, weak but awake. As night fell, Amarachi ate a small, poorly cooked meal she made herself, and for the first time, effort tasted better than comfort. But do not be deceived, this was not the end of her suffering, only the beginning of her awakening. As your storyteller, I must warn you, growth is rarely graceful, and Amarachi's next lesson came in public, where pride hurts the most. Determined to survive, she stepped outside the compound early, hoping to find help or small work to ease her hunger. Her clothes were dirty, her hair uncombed, and the confidence she once had was replaced by nervous glances and fear. At the bus stop, people recognized her immediately, whispers following her like shadows she could not outrun. She asked for simple work, cleaning, errands, anything, but laughter answered her before words did. One woman mocked her loudly, asking who would trust a girl who could not even bathe herself. The crowd laughed. Phones came out again, and Amarachi felt her knees weaken under the weight of public rejection. She stumbled backward, tripped on the rough pavement, and fell hard, scraping her hands as pain shot through her body. No one rushed to help her up. Instead, someone said, "Life has started teaching her." Sitting on the ground, bleeding slightly, Amarachi cried openly, realizing the city would not carry her like her stepmother did. With shaking hands, she stood up alone, dusting herself off, understanding that survival demanded effort, not pity. That walk back home was slow and heavy, each step burning away a layer of entitlement she once wore proudly. And in that painful silence, something new was born, not strength yet, but the desire to change. Let me tell you, this chapter hurts differently, because it is about hope knocking and being refused entry. That evening, Amarachi returned home with wounded hands and a wounded heart, determined to beg Mama Ifunanya for forgiveness. She bathed herself slowly for the first time, scrubbing until her skin burned, washing away dirt, shame, and years of dependence. When she finished, she stood in front of the mirror, wrapped in a towel, staring at a stranger she was only beginning to meet. With trembling courage, she walked to her stepmother's door and knocked softly, her voice barely louder than her fear. No answer came, only silence heavy with boundaries that had never existed before. She knocked again, this time with tears, apologizing through the door, promising change, begging for another chance. Inside, Mama Ifunanya sat quietly, listening, her heart breaking, but knowing that rescue now would steal the lesson. The door remained closed, and Amarachi slid down the wall, crying until her body shook with exhaustion. That night, she slept on the floor outside the room, hungry, sore, and alone, learning that love sometimes steps back to allow growth. In the darkness, she whispered promises to herself, not knowing if anyone would ever believe her again. But something shifted. This time, her words were not excuses, they were seeds waiting for proof. Morning was coming, and with it, a test that would decide whether Amarachi's change was real or just fear talking. As dawn broke, I must tell you this, true change begins when pride dies quietly. Amarachi woke on the cold floor, her body aching, but she did not complain or wait for help. She stood up, cleaned the house without being asked, sweeping corners she once pretended did not exist. When Mama Ifunanya came out, she paused, surprised, but said nothing, choosing to watch instead of praise. Amarachi left the compound early, ignoring whispers, determined to find work no matter how small or humiliating. At the roadside market, a woman finally agreed to let her wash dirty plates for little pay, warning her there would be no mercy. The work was heavy, her hands burned from soap, and her back screamed, but she did not stop. People mocked her, reminding her of who she used to be, but this time, she kept her head down. When she was paid, the money felt heavier than gold, because it was earned, not handed over. She bought food, soap, and water, returning home with dignity wrapped in effort. That night, she cooked and ate quietly, sharing nothing but proof of change through action. Mama Ifunanya watched from a distance, saying nothing, yet hope stirred silently in her chest. But listen, real transformation is tested not in one good day, but in what you do when no one is watching. And unknown to Amarachi, the city was preparing one final humiliation that would either break her or seal her rebirth. As your storyteller, I must slow down here, because this chapter separates temporary effort from true transformation. News of Amarachi's small job spread quickly, and the same neighbors who mocked her gathered, waiting to see if she would fail again. One afternoon at the market, a woman falsely accused Amarachi of stealing money, pointing loudly and drawing a crowd. Old fear rushed back, and for a moment, Amarachi felt the urge to cry and run, the way she used to. But instead, she stood still, hands open, voice calm, asking the woman to check the money again. The crowd murmured, surprised by her composure. As the truth slowly surfaced, the money had fallen behind a basket. Shame changed sides, and the woman apologized quietly, but the damage of public accusation had already tested Amarachi's heart. In the past, she would have quit, blamed others, and returned to comfort, but this time she went back to washing plates. When the day ended, the market woman increased her pay, saying effort and honesty deserve reward. Amarachi returned home exhausted, but proud. Carrying more than money, she carried proof of growth. Mama Ifunanya finally spoke that night, telling her that change is not declared with words, but proven under pressure. Tears flowed freely as Amarachi knelt, not to beg, but to thank the woman who allowed her to learn the hard way. Yet one chapter remained, because true redemption must face the past it tried to escape. Let me finish this story the way the city remembers it, not with noise, but with quiet respect. Weeks passed, and Amarachi did not return to her old ways, even when life grew comfortable again. She woke early, worked hard, bathed herself, cleaned her space, and paid attention to the small disciplines that shape big destinies. One evening, Mama Ifunanya fell sick, weak and unable to stand, and the house grew silent with fear. Without hesitation, Amarachi carried her, bathed her gently, cooked, cleaned, and stayed awake through the night. As water ran over the woman's tired body, Mama Ifunanya cried, not from pain, but from seeing transformation with her own eyes. The roles had changed, and the lesson was complete without a single word spoken. When the neighbors heard, their whispers turned into respect, and mockery faded into quiet acknowledgement. Amarachi did not announce her growth, she lived it daily, understanding that second chances demand consistency. Today, when the city tells her story, they no longer laugh, they warn their children with it, because life does not reward laziness, but it always gives a second chance to those willing to change. And if you are listening to this story and seeing yourself in Amarachi, remember this: no one is coming to carry you forever, but the day you stand up, life will meet you halfway. Laziness may feel comfortable, but it always ends in shame. Comfort without effort slowly destroys dignity, self-respect, and opportunities. Kindness has limits when it is abused. Help is meant to lift you, not replace your responsibility. When support turns into dependency, it eventually stops. Life teaches harder lessons when advice is ignored. Warnings are gentle teachers, consequences are painful ones. No one owes you care forever. Every adult must eventually learn to stand on their own, or life will force the lesson publicly. True change is proven by actions, not promises. Growth begins when effort continues even when no one is watching or praising. Humiliation can either destroy you or rebuild you. Shame becomes powerful only when it leads to self-reflection and discipline. Responsibility brings dignity. The smallest honest work is more honorable than comfortable dependence. Second chances exist, but they demand consistency. Redemption is not a moment, it is a lifestyle maintained daily. Discipline transforms destiny. Simple habits like cleanliness, effort, and accountability shape a person's future. If you want respect and a true growth, the world may laugh at your fall, but it will respect your rise.